Welcome to the webinar Circular Economy Exploring an Innovative Approach for the Tourism Sector. I'm Dirk Lesser, the Director of Sustainable Tourism Development Program at the World Tourism Organization. I will be today your moderator during this session. Today's webinar is the result of a collaboration between many, the leading members of the One Planet Sustainable Tourism Program, UNWTO, the government of France, the government of Morocco, the government of the Republic of Korea, and the colleagues from UN Environment. This is the 13th webinar of our program, and the second already on our series on circularity in tourism. As many of you know, the One Planet Network is the new brand of a 10-year framework of programs on sustainable consumption and production. The Sustainable Tourism Program counts on a network of 151 actors all over the world, working together to enhance the national cooperation to accelerate the shift towards sustainable consumption and production within the tourism sector, and to decouple its growth from the consumption of finite natural resources both in developed and developing countries. The Sustainable Tourism Program offers the opportunity to aggregate the efforts of the members to advance the Agenda 2030, notably SDG 12 on responsible consumption and production. Furthermore, we offer possibilities for members to participate in public fora, discussions, debates, and gain international visibility, creating synergies across the activities of our members and implement our future activities. Actively using technology to learn is also one of the objectives, and we hope you will enjoy today's webinar, the presentations, and the discussion. Before we start, I would like to recall a few tips for a smooth session. All attendees are on listen-only mode. Please make sure that you are muted, as long as the sessions are ongoing, to ensure good quality and the sound of the speaker's presentation. Attendees can send questions to the panelists anytime throughout the webinar by posting them in the chat box of the control panel. When typing a question, please indicate to whom you wish to address this question. At the end of the webinar, during the Q&A session, I will be reading out some of your questions, and the panelists will share their replies with you. Please make sure that you send your questions to everybody, selecting the everybody option within the chat, so that I can read them as well. This session will be recorded, and the YouTube link of the recording of the session will be published tomorrow on UNWTO's website, www.unwto.org, and as well on the One Planet Network website. We encourage you to share the recording of this webinar with your colleagues and networks. Now, let us quickly recap the objectives of the webinar. This year, the cycle of webinar aims at showcasing how circular economy solutions in the tourism sector can accelerate the shift to sustainable consumption and production. As you know, with SDG 12, SDP has an explicit SDG, which will be given at this year's high-level political forum on sustainable development, also known as HLTF, a special thematic focus. In addition, let me recall what the tourism sector represents. It was continuously growing over the past 70 years, from 25 million international arrivals back then in 1950 to 1.3 billion international tourist arrivals, not to count a much larger group of domestic trips. We expect that this growth continues to the year 2030 with 1.8 billion international arrivals globally. It is logical that this growth needs urgently to be decoupled from the use of resources. Circularity represents a great opportunity to make this decoupling happening in practice. The objectives of the webinar are: provide definitions on circular economy, explore potential of circular models within the tourism sector, learn more about innovative business models that apply circular principles, explore concrete results of implementation of circular business models through the case study on Hotel Verde project. We will now move on to the first presentation of today's webinar. Ms. Anna Tari is the founder of the Circular Economy Club, the International Circular Economy Network. Anna will give an introduction on circular economy concepts and present strategies of the Circular Economy Club in order to mainstream and accelerate circular practices. Anna, you have now 10 minutes for your presentation. Enjoy the time, a lively presentation. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you for the introduction and thanks for having me. Well, as Dirk introduced, I founded the Circular Economy Club. Let's move on to the next slide where I can share what we do at the club. Yeah, next, please. Excellent, thank you. So what we do is we bring together the community of people who are working on this field, and we design programs to accelerate the transition towards the circular economy. So now, before I share the specifics of what we do, let's do an overview of the concept of circularity in the next slide. Here, so circularity is best understood when compared to the linear economy in which we live in which we take resources. What's wrong with this model? There are three main issues with the linear model. One is the population is growing faster than scarce resources, and we use non-recyclable materials and fossil energy that basically cannot be easily regenerated. Second are the environmental issues we all know, including the quantity of CO2 in the atmosphere, changes in temperature, the availability of clean water, and the existence of non-degradable elements in the biosphere. And the third issue, and this one is key to understand the opportunity of the circular economy, the third big issue is that we are actually losing money. We are losing the value of the materials and the energy that is embedded in the products that we are just thrashing away. So this last issue is key to, as I said, let's see more about how we can stop losing so much value in the next slide. So in this slide, we have a diagram of a simplified circular supply chain where waste becomes a resource to produce something else. In this model, materials go back into the system to produce something else, just as nature would do with any component. And here it's key to keep products at the highest value for as long as possible. So for example, reusing a t-shirt is much more preferred than recycling it, because in recycling you are basically spending energy again, and you are breaking down a product that still has value. So let's keep in mind that. Let's keep in mind that the circular economy is not only about recycling, it is about extending the life of products as much as possible through maintaining products, reusing, refurnishing, etc. So now let's look at the quote on the left. According to McKinsey, 80% of the $3.2 trillion worth of materials used in producing consumer goods were never recovered. 80% were never recovered. So anyone can see here how much value we're losing, and any sector is in front of an opportunity here. And this is one reason why the circular economy is strategic for any sector. So the proof that this is a real opportunity is that the major players are already adopting the framework and realizing about that. And they are, so for example, first they are designing objects for circularity, such as designing in a way that is easier to pull elements apart afterwards. So for example, Nike is investing in technology to maximize the reusability of every material within the trainers. And just to name an example for tourism, in tourism, for instance, hotels can be built so that it's easy to pull doors, windows, and walls apart. So that means they will be designed to be disassembled so that they don't have to be literally destroyed by being demolished at the end of their life. Other organizations are designing new business models, which usually means changing from selling to renting. As an example, in tourism, the Schiphol airport in the Netherlands, they are using light as a service from Philips. So how does this work? So the Schiphol airport doesn't own the lighting of the installation. They rent them from Philips, which means they pay a flat rate for the lights and the light bulbs. And because the rate is flat, when the bill gets too expensive, then Philips needs to pay that extra bit. So this business model is incentivizing Philips to keep the system as energy efficient as possible, and they are maintaining the installation all the time for it to be efficient and basically not to pay that extra bit. And third, organizations are realizing that they can save money by reusing and sharing. One example is Unilever, who are recovering their waste from packaging to be able to reuse it again. So there is an opportunity, an economic one here. Now let's see next slide, another reason why the circular economy is strategic. So in this graph, we see the demand of resources growing over time to the point where if we continue with the linear economy, we would need 3 planets by 2050. So to keep living in this planet and to keep growing forever, we need to improve how we manage materials. We need to improve how we're growing. So how do we grow better? The strategy is to redesign our systems, our industries, our companies, so that we are able to decouple the growth from the use of resources. Now, redesigning everything is not easy, I know. It is challenging, and we need to know the most important challenges we face. Therefore, let's move to the next slide to see the 3 challenges when implementing circularity in the travel and tourism industry specifically. So first, I think the circular economy framework is very clear when implemented in the industrial sector, but there is a lack of a circular framework for travel and tourism. And I think that it needs to be defined so that we all understand what we mean when we talk about circularity in tourism. Some ideas are we could design it per sector, considering how it's circular, transport, etc., and then put all together. We could design it per type of destination, maybe. So circular cities, circular seaside destinations, you name it. But it needs to be on paper. Good. Another challenge is finding the business case. So this model is adopted faster when the economic benefits are obvious. For example, it's easy to understand how a soda drink producer saves money by recovering the used bottles to fill them up again. But it's not always easy to find those economic incentives in other situations. So we need to be creative to find and clearly communicate the business case. Third, we need to think in systems and see how one's externalities affect others in tourism. So there is a field of research called industrial symbiosis, where, to put it simple, waste from one factory can be used as a resource for another factory. And I think we can create a parallel model in tourism, something like destination symbiosis, where a destination in which all stakeholders are coordinated and ensuring a fully 100% sustainable experience for every traveler. So yes, we need to integrate and coordinate better, and we need to come together. So let me finish my presentation by telling you a bit more about how the Circular Economy Club is trying to do that, trying to bring people together, and how we are mainstreaming circularity. Thank you. So first, we think everyone has a role to transform our economy. Everyone needs to be informed, and everyone has a responsibility to share what they know. So in the club's website, anyone can upload information from research to projects to funding opportunities, anything that helps the circular economy transition become a reality, become real. We have more than 40 mentors who give free advice to anyone doing or with an interest in doing a circular project. And we also do a lot of work offline. We have over 60 organizers worldwide who help disseminate these ideas also at a local level. So those are experts in the field who are volunteering their time to bring the club activities to their cities and to help connect people locally. And we think that's crucial, a global platform that allows local engagement as well. So this is basically how we're trying to bring the community of people together, the community of people who believe in this framework and are ready to work at a local level and also connect at a global level, exchange best practices and share what they know. So anyone listening today is welcome to join the club, of course, which is free for everyone to join and share what they know and to learn from others. So thanks for listening, and feel free to write any questions on the chat, and then I'll reply at the end of the webinar. Now, the floor is yours again. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you very much, Anna, for this interesting presentation and starting here to frame our today's webinar. We very much look forward later into the questions you get from the audience during the Q&A session. As a reminder to everybody, please send your questions and tell us, now this is a question for Anna, using the chat box, and she will be answering these questions then during the webinar at the end during the Q&A session. It's now time to introduce our second presenter, Dr. Jesper Manisch. He is a senior researcher at the Center for Regional and Tourism Research. Jesper will introduce to us the concept of circularity within the tourism sector. We will talk about business opportunities that circularity may unlock. Jesper, you have 20 minutes now for your presentation. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to speak in this very nice forum. As appears from my title, what I want to do is to look at the circular economy also in a transition perspective, a system transition perspective, and I want also to discuss what are the opportunities for tourism businesses in that context. Can we have the next? Yeah, and this was the next. Yeah, my presentation. Yes, thank you. My presentation basically had two parts, a more conceptual one and a more practical one. In the first, more conceptual one, I tried to understand how can we define the circular economy and also how can we define and understand the transitioning processes by which it emerges, and I want also, of course, to focus on in the context of tourism. And then in the second, more practical part, I want to look at what circular approaches and business models that may be applied by tourism businesses and also destinations. And here I distinguish between two types of initiatives: production-orientated opportunities and consumption-orientated opportunities. If I have the time in the end, I also can sum up and conclude. Can we have the next? Thank you. Well, there are many definitions of the circular economy, and in these years where it's really an emerging and gaining popularity in the research and also in the real world, there are so many writings and reports and analysis made, and it's just important to try to agree on a common understanding of what do we actually mean about the circular economy. Some colleagues, Kircher, have made a definition by looking at what is the literature about the circular economy and what is the important components of a definition of the circular economy. And it goes like this: a circular economy describes an economic system, and I here already now would say it's a non-yet existing economic system that is based on some distinct principles for how to using natural resources that replace the end-of-life concept that is embedded in the linear model with some new principles. They could be summarized as reducing, reusing, recycling, and recovering materials. Then another component of this definition is that these principles are applied in all the value chains from production and distribution and to consumption. And this means that they actually, these circular economies, they are operating at three levels: at the micro level of products, companies, individual consumers; at a meso level of industrial parks and supply chains; and also at a macro level of city or regions, nations, and beyond that. And then also, not to forget, the very important last component, with the aim to accomplish sustainable development. And this implies the three famous dimensions of sustainability: environmental quality, economic prosperity, and social equity. In many ways, you could say that this could be summarized in sustainability is the goal, circularity is the way. And to me, this is a very important part of this definition, to connect the two concepts of sustainability and circularity. Because maybe in the debate about the concept, it's maybe confusing what is the similarities and what is actually the differences between the concept. Here we see that sustainability is the goal, and circularity is not the goal, but it's a way, a method of how to do it. Can we have the next? Well, in this definition, it's also very clear that the circular economy does not exist yet. It's maybe it is emerging, maybe it is something that is coming up. In transition theoretical research, there are models trying to describe these and these transition processes, and they basically operate with three levels of change processes: niches and regimes and landscape. And starting with the regime level, you have a dominating at the moment a linear economy regime that is sustained by laws and regulation and infrastructures and markets and technologies, etc. And at the bottom of the diagram, you have a lot of, at the niche level, you have innovations of new circular technologies and solutions. And this is occurring in a very practice-based forms of learning. It's not a master plan of research and science-driven development, but very entrepreneurial kind of processes that we can see. And then at the overall landscape level, you have some mega trends of economic, political, social, environmental trends that maybe put a pressure on the linear regime and encourage this level innovations. So this is just to give an idea about how can we understand the process of by which circular economy maybe emerges in these years. The next, please. Can we have the next slide, please? This was okay. I take this one. Okay. I now come to the next part of my presentation, where I want to more practical to discuss what could be the implications for the tourism sector of this. How can tourism contribute to a transitioning to the circular economy? We all know that the tourism sector has a very bad sustainability record, mainly due to the traveling element, but also the vast use of a lot of resources during the tourist stays. But despite this, tourism indeed has a lot of potentials for encouraging transitioning to the circular economy. And in the following, I will discuss some of these opportunities in two types: production-oriented opportunities and consumption-oriented opportunities. If we start with the production-oriented, there are the very classical and very almost trivial one of reducing the use of resources and saving some costs. And I think really there are a lot of cost-saving opportunities, focusing on the main flows of resources in the tourism sector, which is energy and water and food. There are many examples to choose from in a normal web search, and we can see a lot of examples of energy saving, how efficient new buildings, solar panels installed, and so on. And another example of this was the lighting from Schiphol Airport from Philips. There are a lot of water and energy saving laundry technologies. For instance, the company Berenson, they use to develop new technologies of how to wash the linen from the hotels, reusing water, saving energy, and so on. A lot of the furniture, carpets, and other equipment and fixtures in hotels, restaurants, and so on, they also can have their lives extended by a lot of remanufacturing and repairing. You can reduce the food waste through basically maybe not so much about new technologies, but through new practices of the staff. Produce on demand, smaller buffet, or maybe not having a buffet, have yourself buffet, but only have produce on demand. I think I really would like to have the time to really dig into concrete examples of these, but I here maybe can refer to a report that we have made this, and the local in the bottom of the slide here, Circularity, refers to a project, an Interreg South Baltic project, in which we have made a handbook for circular economy in the tourism sector, which has a lot of examples from the tourism sector of these types of initiatives. And maybe it's important to say here that due to this virgin state of the circular economy, it's maybe a little difficult to find at least documented best practices. You can find a lot of examples and good cases, but it's maybe too early to talk about documented best practices. And it's part of relevant information for reading this handbook of Circularity. Can we have the next slide, please? Another production-oriented opportunity is to start thinking, how can we actually have new revenue sources from developing new products in a circular manner? And a very obvious way is to simply sell the food that is wasted. And there are already now a lot of electronic applications to organize this kind of trade. In Denmark, there is made an application called Too Good To Go, where restaurants, caterers, and supermarkets that have leftover of food, that they advertise this leftover, and then customers, they can find it, they can purchase this via app, and then they can go to the place and collect it. But this model actually could be broadened out for hotels to start thinking, what are actually our flows of resources and the use of resources that we have, of furniture, of mattresses, of building materials, and other kinds of byproducts that maybe has a value, maybe a commercial value that we can sell, but at least a value that it can be reused by others, and maybe used also in network or building of good relationships with supply partners and local partners and so on. So that can be later on maybe have a commercial value. There's also examples like from the Austrian ski destination Werfending that have organized a rental of electric cars driven by solar panels that they rent out for the guests. Relevant business model in this way of thinking could be waste as a resource, leasing, and sharing economy. Let's go to the next slide. And now we go to the consumption-orientated opportunities. Compared to other sectors, tourism has some distinct characteristics that makes this particular sector a key to encouraging a transition towards more sustainable consumption. And the UNWTO have talked about this in a report where they call it transformative tourism, and other like Jeremy Smith have called it transforming traveling. One of the distinct specificities of tourism is what I here call the sharing economy of tourism. As tourists, we actually carry very little with us when we go. The tourism is basically to visit another place without your own stuff, and use the properties of other people staying of that place. That could be very basically the room and the bed in which we sleep. And this sharing economy actually means that some of the primary barriers to a more circular economy and some of the business models that are promoted by the circular economy, such as replacing ownership by access, sharing amenity between users, they are already in place within the tourism and hospitality sector. But this aspect could be, in my view at least, could be organized and explored in much more strategic way as a core element of the services and the experiences that hotels or restaurants or other provides for the guest. The use and evaluation of the guest of the goods and experiences that is provided by the host. And the artifacts here could be, examples, raincoats, sun hats, cycling equipment, toys, books, or whatever. That could be an important part of the staging and storytelling about the venue. The next slide, please. Yeah. Another aspect of tourism very important is that it actually is, in essence, is what the American consultants Pine and Gilmore call experience economy. Experience economy means a specific business model in which value creation relies not on the functional product features, but on the memorable, meaningful experiences that are co-created by producers and consumers. And this form of business model makes staging and storytelling of such experiences a key of value creation. And tourism relies on an interpersonal host-guest relationship, which also gives opportunities for a very close interaction between the host and the guest, and also for influencing the way guests think and behave, not just during the stay, but also after their stay. So actually, the circular economy can become a central part of the host-guest relationship. And it can be a way to include and engage the guests in ways that add to the guest experience by allowing them to contribute and at the same time to make sense in ways that make sense from an environmental perspective. And in this way, tourism businesses could be a form of what I here call transformative living labs, where guests, they have experiences, they play with, they gain information and knowledge about, and they can rethink the organization of their life and mainly their use of resources. And this option could be also a part of the pricing of products, so that guests' use of energy, of electricity, of water during the stay, it could be reflected in the price of the product. So actually they are compensated for responsible behavior. And you can say that in a more, this is a very commercial frame that is very important, but also a valorization and acceptance process in a broader context, in a more cultural, outside the business, so to speak, is also important in the longer run in order to change the demands for tourism and traveling in more sustainable directions. Well, can we have the next one? Can we have the next slide? Okay, thank you. Summing up and concluding, as was clear from, I hope clear from my presentation, it's important to look at the circular economy in a transition system perspective. And also that it is to realize that it is not something given, that it is still not realized, that it's a very open-ended social dynamics occurring at multiple societal levels. Tourism is only you can say, a small part of such a transition system. We could call it a small niche, and it relies on other sectors, legislation, technologies, infrastructures, etc. Tourism can contribute to it, but cannot alone realize a truly circular economy. And here the important message is that concerted policy and entrepreneurial actions at multiple levels are required in order to get a circular economy. Yet, tourism has big potentials for encouraging transition to a circular economy. There are a lot of opportunities of saving costs and creating new revenue sources by implementing circular principles and business model. And these opportunities are as big as in any other sector. When it comes to encouraging more sustainable forms of consumption, I would say that tourism is a very key sector compared to most others. And this is due to the very close interpersonal host-guest relationship that characterizes tourism, that can be exploited for forms of transformative tourism that support guests into taking sustainable, responsible choices. And the way to do this could be this idea of living labs in which guests they play and reflect on their daily life and how they actually use resources. And I think an important initiative there could be, and I think we will see this in the coming years more and more, that guests may be compensated economically for responsible use of resources. Yes, this was my presentation. Here I have a lot of references to relevant literature that is mentioned in the slides, and of course I will like to point to the one of myself and colleagues that I mentioned before, that has the handbook for transitioning towards a circular economy, that has a lot of examples of new circular initiatives in the sector. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Jesper, very much for your presentation and all the examples you were giving from the production but also the consumption side. Later during the Q&A session, we will address then the questions directed to you. A reminder to everybody, put your questions into the chat box and tell us clearly to whom you direct these questions and share it with everybody so that we can see that. Now, the next presenter comes from Africa. It's JG Africa, partner of the Sustainable Tourism Program. Ms. Alison Kessner is an executive associate of JG Africa, and she will be delivering, through her presentation, the case of circular practices within the hotel industry. She will especially speak about Hotel Verden. Sunny, I'm glad that you are with us. You have 10 minutes for your presentation. The floor is yours.
Hello, can everybody... Hello? Hi, can everybody hear me? Thank you very much for the opportunity to present our case study. I represent a company called JG Africa, and this particular case study was done with myself and another colleague called Suzanne Carter from EnviroSense. Sorry, could I have the next? We also represent two non-profit organizations called EcoStandard and the African Circular Economy Network, of which JG Africa is also a founder. Next slide, please. Next slide. So many of you may have visited Cape Town before, and this is quite an iconic picture that most of you, or many of you who have come here would have taken a photograph of, and that's Table Mountain. Can I have the next slide, please? But have you ever seen it from this perspective before? This is essentially the view from Table Mountain, from one of our biggest landfills in Cape Town, where a lot of our waste is disposed. And essentially part of circularity is really how do we redirect this waste? Because it's not really waste, is it? These are materials that are being discarded. Next slide, please. So essentially about 85% of our waste is still landfilled in South Africa, and this is the bigger picture. We have a lot of work to do here, but there are so many more opportunities. Next slide. Is this really sustainable practice? And I think we all really agree that it is not. Next slide. You'll notice that my presentation is filled with pictures, which is, I think, quite, still get the picture message home. This is another landfill site in Cape Town. It's called Coastal Park. And actually on the one side of it, there is actually a Ramsar registered wetland. So our landfill sites are actually in positions of, natural beauty as well. They're surrounded by some of our conservation areas. Next slide, please. And we do have material recovery facilities, but are these enough? Next slide, please. So really, the definition of waste in terms of the South African legislation is really, it means any substance, whether or not that substance can be reduced, reused, recycled, or recovered. And waste is simply something that is surplus or unwanted or rejected. Could I have the next slide, please? But really, isn't it really the result of environmentally unintelligent design of products or services, or poor operational practices? Next slide. So we need to understand our materials better. Waste is a human concept. Our economy is built on a wasteful production of goods and services. And we generally come to accept the existence of waste, pollution, and resource depletion as an unavoidable consequence of our modern society and economy. But I don't think it is. Next slide, please. So, essentially, the reason why we're all here is the circular economy. So we need to try and transition from a linear economy of where we are at the moment to a circular economy. But this is not going to happen overnight, and there is a transition. Next slide, please. And we've heard now from our thinkers before me of what the circular economy is, and we're trying to look for an economy that is more restorative and regenerative by design, and to keep products and components and materials at their highest utility and value at all times, and distinguish between technical and biological cycles to have a continuous positive development cycle. Next slide, please. So, how do we do this in a hotel environment? Next slide, please. So, I'll give you a brief introduction to Hotel Verde and show you what we did there. Next slide. We developed an operational material management plan for the hotel, because Hotel Verde is following, they are Africa's greenest hotel, and essentially having a zero waste to landfill strategy. So we needed to develop a system that could do this for them, because essentially zero waste to landfill doesn't just mean recycling. Next slide, please. I'm going to run through these very quickly. So for the next 4 slides, if we can just flick through them. So essentially, the general product evaluation criteria, and better for guests was the one, because obviously the guest is the most important part of this hotel. Next slide. Better for the community. Hotel Verde is very in touch and in tune with the community that it is based in, and as well as the suppliers from a local supplier perspective. Next slide. Better for the planet. Next slide. Better for the hotelier. Obviously, it needs to make sense to the hotelier as well. Next slide, please. So the elements of our operational materials management plan are essentially we developed a buyer's guide and a supplier's guide. We needed to retrain people in terms of how to think about the procurement for the hotel. And we developed a scorecard aided by a product information sheet filled in by the supplier and the manufacturer. And we assessed these products across their life cycle. Next slide, please. Essentially, this is just an overview, and we developed these types of scorecards for cleaning chemicals, guest amenities, in terms of the toiletries only, laundry chemicals, and the food and beverages sector. Next slide, please. We were able to then compare the different products in terms of the composition, product production and manufacturing practices, packaging and distribution, and performance. Next slide, please. And present us in what's called a fiber diagram to compare the different products in terms of these to understand what would be best for the hotel at the time. And obviously prices on there too. Next slide, please. So guest amenities at Hotel Verde, you'll see that these are in dispensers as opposed to small removable bottles of shampoo or soap or hand soap. Next slide, please. Food and beverage sector, one of the aspects is also part of guest amenity. So you'll notice that instead of the little small milk that you would get in the tiny little packages that are generally not really recycled, the Hotel Verde opted for a reusable bottle. Next slide, please. In the fridge of fresh, beautiful milk, that's enough for a cup of coffee. Next slide, please. Also, encourage the guests to actually separate their waste in their hotel room themselves. Next slide, please. So essentially, it's a different way of doing things. We encourage bulk supply. So even for the delivery of milk or orange juice or fruit juice, we were asking the suppliers to supply these things in bulk containers, which could then be taken back by the supplier and refilled. Local suppliers obviously scored based on the scorecard. Less packaging and take-back systems were required. Less waste, absolutely. And comparative product information were key. Products that are better for the environment, community, guests, and the hotelier. Next slide, please. So essentially, we need to rethink the way we operate in our business environment, rethink the ingredients and packaging we choose and accept from our suppliers, rethink the environmental and social ethics of suppliers, and understand the true impact of products and services across their life cycle. Next slide, please. As we know, we are trying to assist with the SDG 12 goal. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for your time. I hope I was on time. I did speed through quite a lot of the slides, but open to questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally, very much for this presentation. We had now three inspiring presentations, all coming from a different angle, but coinciding all that there is a need to change the way of our frameworks, the way of the use of resources, and supporting here the interest we have in the tourism sector to promote the concept of circularity for tourism, in tourism, and through tourism. We have now the opportunity to address the questions from those who attended us. Nearly 100 connections have been seen here on the screen, but many questions can be asked. The questions were now directed. Let me see first the question from Peter, connecting the two other presenters by saying that he appreciated the statement of Jefffer that sustainability is the goal and the circular economy is the way to do it. He'd asked, do the other speakers agree? The reason why I'm asking is that people often say that the terminology is confusing and requires a lot of explanation. Anna and Sally, for the two of you, would you be able to answer that?
Yes. So thanks for the question, Peter. I think it's a good way to put it, and the way that's perceived, because, like, in a way, yes, the circular economy framework allows us to live in a more sustainable world. But what we see in practice is that people are trying to be sustainable by doing less bad, so consuming less energy, for example, which often means using just less fossil fuels. But even if the environment was capable of coping with that energy usage, and even if it was sustainable, this would still be bad for the environment. So I think here's the key difference, that the circular economy is saying, why do we have to do that in the first place? So why do we need to produce less just not produce waste in the first place. So let's redesign everything so that we do not have to produce bad stuff and then have to figure out how to diminish it and make it sustainable. So I think that's a key difference we see within sustainability and the circular economy. Thank you.
Do you wish to add?
Hi. Yes, I would tend to agree with Anna. I think the opportunity with circular economy is that it gives us the opportunity to completely reframe the way that we currently think about the way we generate or make or manufacture products or provide services. So yes, it's within the sustainability realm, but I think it's definitely an opportunity to try and rephrase and reframe the current way that we think. So we definitely need a slightly clearer, crisper terminology that makes financial sense. Thanks.
Sally, thank you very much. We have now a question for Jesper. Anna is asking, do you have any example of tourism policies promoting circular economy in the sector? Jesper.
Yes, thank you for this interesting question. As a matter of fact, I have here the last couple of minutes I have been thinking about this, and I cannot come up with something, at least not what we talk about policies. What we see of policies is maybe we could mention the EU, the new plastic regulative for how to use plastics. As far as I can see, policies has another level, and I don't see examples of directly policies to tourism, directed to tourism, with a goal or with a concept, using the concept of circular. On the other hand, there could be, and I think there is growingly, and as I mentioned, the CO2 project that is an example of a Interreg project where different regions go together in order to develop circular solutions for the tourism. And I think these examples are more and more, I mean, innovation examples of publicly supported innovation. I think this could have to be my reply to that. I think at the moment policies are in another more broad level when it comes to circularity and does not target specific sectors in our societies.
Thank you very much. Yona is right now asking a thought-provoking question, and she says that many of the examples presented here in the context of circularity are actually cases which we had seen happening by committed actors in the tourism sector under the general concept of sustainability in general. Now, this links her question to what level of innovation do you think is needed in circularity and to improve and create more tipping points? That is maybe a question for Anna.
So what level of innovation? I think the highest level, I think we need to be very disruptive and creative. So I think we need to redesign how we are producing, how we are consuming, how we are generating business models. And so I think we need to start from zero, like looking at what the needs are. So for example, in tourism, looking at what the needs of the tourists are, and starting to design if we haven't done all the mistakes, like how would we do it today with this framework, and starting from there and trying to be disruptive. So just to give you an example of something I think is very disruptive. So the washing machine sector is something that is usually it creates a lot of waste, because for a consumer it's cheaper to buy another washing machine than to repair one that you already have. So there's a startup in the Netherlands called Bando. So what they do is they rent the washing machine. So basically by changing the business model, which was very innovative in the industry, by renting the washing machine, then the consumer just pays per use, and the company, the washing machine producer, is actually incentivized for the machine to last as long as possible because it's theirs. So by shifting the business model there, then the washing machine producers, they design the washing machine in a way that is very easy to repair it. They have a chip in every part of the washing machine, and they made it so that it's very easy to put it apart. And they have a dashboard in the organization, and that chip sends the information to the dashboard, so they know before you as a consumer if the washing machine needs to be repaired, and they come and they fix it for you. So I think that's very disruptive, and I think we need more level of those, more innovations of those levels. Thank you.
There's another question for Jesper from Frank. He's curious to understand the transformative living labs better. Jesper, can you explain some of those exercises in the past?
Yes, I acknowledge that what the whole idea is maybe more the idea in itself. I think this idea is already implemented, but I'm not sure. I'm rather sure that they don't work with this necessarily idea of a living lab. But it's actually very much about marketing. How are these circular initiatives or sustainability initiatives of hotels and others, how do they market them? How do they tell it? In which way do they integrate this in their provision of services? And I think there's a growing awareness of this role, and I think I'm not sure I can make it more concrete with very concrete examples. I can say that in Hungary there is this amusement or activity park called Lady Bird that, for instance, you can pay a smaller price for the entrance if you only use recyclable materials during your stay. And they also on their webpage and in their business model talk about this engaging, the same idea that I have, engaging consumers and making them involved in the activities and also making them reflecting on how do we live our lives, how can we reduce our impact on nature. I think in the coming years we will see this emerging of and maybe also a crystallization of some ways to do it. At the moment, I think many hotels and so on, they are a little unaware how pushy should we be to our guests. Are our guests ready to go into this more explicit dialogue about the bad side of consumption, so to speak? So it's a process of these new business models and these new ways of doing things are at the moment in a very uncertain phase, but I think in the coming years you will see more and more first movers trying to explicate these things as a business opportunity.
Jesper, thank you very much. Sally, you raised the hand.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity again. Essentially, I just want to provide an example, which obviously I didn't raise during the very short presentation, but was at Hotel Verde, what they also do is, I showed one example of the bins where you could earn a Verdino every time you recycled or you put your correct waste in the correct bin, right? So that was a form of messaging to the guests without being too intrusive, as part of a reward system, which the Verdino is a currency developed by Hotel Verde, which you can then use on site to purchase a drink or a snack or something, or go to your hotel room cost. That's one example. The other example is in their actual gym, they have treadmills that will tell you for the period of time that you've been running how much electricity you've generated. So these are quite nice examples of how they're communicating with the guests without being too intrusive, but being interactive, if you like, which I thought were quite good from a hotel perspective. Thanks.
I think the number of questions over here shows that the interest is very high. We will not be able to address them all. We are coming to an end of today's session, but as a next landing point, I wanted to stress that the work in this field continues. The webinars will continue. We invite you all to come or to see through the streaming the different presentations which will be delivered during the second World Conference on Smart Destinations taking place later this month, 25th to 27th in Oviedo in Spain. On our website, there are the different links to follow us live in Spanish and in English. Circularity plays a very important role also during those discussions, and the link with technology and timely measurement is evident and important. I thank you all very much for your attention and hope that the presentations and discussions today during our webinar have all inspired you a bit more and allowing you to make the difference. It is in our hands that we can make this difference in small collective steps. We are achieving much. Travel with care. There's only one planet. Goodbye and until soon.